When Ozzy Osbourne passed away, the world lost a legend, a man whose wild persona and chaotic rock star antics defined a generation. But what came to light in his estate after his death wasn't scandal, wasn't chaos, it was something far more surprising, something that shifted our understanding of him entirely. Behind all the fame and madness, Ozzy had left a quiet legacy, one that was deeply personal, touching, and rooted in his love for his family. You'd expect his final days to be just another page in the rock and roll history books, another wild ride. But what those closest to him found as they went through his estate was a man who had spent his final years quietly preparing, thoughtfully and carefully, for the future. This was a man who, despite battling health issues and dealing with the many struggles that come with aging, had one singular focus: making sure his family was taken care of, that they were protected, and that they would be supported long after he was gone. Ozzy's last chapter wasn't the end of a rock star's journey. It was the culmination of years of effort to give his family stability. Those who knew him in his final years saw a different side to the man who had once been synonymous with chaos. Sure, he was the wild prince of darkness who brought heavy metal into the mainstream. But in those quieter moments, he was a man who thought deeply about what mattered most to him: his loved ones. Diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and struggling with chronic health problems, Ozzy knew his time was running out, but his mind was still sharp. He remained mentally alert, determined to face the future with a level of preparation few would expect from someone so long associated with an unpredictable life. In an interview just a year before his passing, he told Rolling Stone, "I'm far from done, but I know I've got to be realistic." It wasn't defeat, it was preparation. What came out of this preparation was a blueprint for the future of his legacy that was carefully constructed long before the inevitable health decline. It wasn't rushed, no panic, no last-minute changes. Everything was organized, structured, and handled in the most calm and deliberate way. Sharon, his wife, would oversee the estate, and their children would be cared for. The estate was worth an estimated $220 million, but it wasn't just about money. It was about creating something that honored the family Ozzy had so deeply loved. The public knew Ozzy as a larger-than-life rock star, the man who threw bats into audiences, stage-dived into chaos, and lived on the edge. But behind that public figure was a man who, despite his antics, was incredibly private about his family life. He'd often say that his family meant everything to him. Those were not just words, they were part of the legacy he was crafting long before his death. When the Osbournes' reality TV show became a sensation in 2002, it opened up the private world of the Osbourne family to the public. For the first time, fans saw Ozzy not just as the rock icon, but as a father, a husband, and a man with flaws, struggles, and moments of vulnerability. The show turned their chaotic household into pop culture gold. But not all of it was easy. While Kelly and Jack rose to fame, there was one member of the family who deliberately stayed out of the spotlight: Amy, Ozzy's oldest daughter. Amy's choice to step away from the cameras wasn't an act of rebellion, it was an act of self-preservation. She was 16 when the reality show started, and she simply didn't want her life to be part of the spectacle. It wasn't about rejecting her family, it was about protecting herself. She wanted privacy, a quiet life away from the cameras. In a 2020 interview, Amy shared how the fame and pressure that came with the show just didn't align with the future she envisioned for herself. She had no interest in being a character on a reality show. It wasn't a rebellion, she said. It was self-preservation. Despite the tension her absence may have caused in the public eye, Sharon, Ozzy's wife, understood. She acknowledged the pain of seeing her daughter step away from the family drama, but she also respected Amy's strength. Amy knew who she was, and she knew that to preserve her identity, she had to step out of the limelight. For years, Amy remained mostly out of the public eye. She released music under the name Aro, avoiding interviews and maintaining a quiet life. Her identity, separate from the Osbourne name, became more than just a symbol of rebellion, it became a statement of independence. She made it clear that she wasn't just another celebrity child, she was her own person. Then, when Ozzy's estate plan emerged, people were stunned to see Amy's name there. It was the last thing anyone expected. After all, Amy had distanced herself from the family's public image for so long. But the truth behind this wasn't a family rift. It was a testament to the deep love and fairness Ozzy had for his children. He didn't play favorites. He made sure everything was laid out, meticulously, with his children equally supported. Ozzy Osbourne, the man known for his outrageous stage antics, was at his core a man who loved his family fiercely and wanted to make sure that love lasted beyond his time. Behind the eyeliner, behind the rock star persona, there was a man who was a father, a husband, and a protector. And in his final act, he made sure no one was left behind. He didn't want to be remembered just for the chaos, the wild performances, and the outrageous moments that made him a legend. He wanted to be remembered as a man who, despite all the chaos, always put his family first. As the world watched the final days of Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, many anticipated drama, scandal, and chaos. His life had been defined by unpredictability, madness on stage, unpredictable moments that became the stuff of legend. So, when news broke of his passing, most people expected the usual circus of inheritance battles, rewritten wills, and family feuds. But what they found instead was something entirely different, something that stunned even the closest of insiders. Silenced. In the wake of his death, the details of Ozzy's estate came to light, and they told a story that no one expected. His will wasn't filled with drama or last-minute changes. Instead, it was a carefully crafted, quiet reflection of his values. His legacy was not just about the music, the chaos, or the persona of a rock star. It was about family. And in that, Ozzy Osbourne had made his final statement. The estate, worth over $220 million, was structured with incredible care. Ozzy's will ensured that everything, from royalties to properties, would be divided equally among his children, Jack, Kelly, and Amy. Yes, Amy, the daughter who had stepped away from the family spotlight. The one who made a conscious choice to protect her privacy and avoid the reality show fame that transformed her siblings into household names. For years, fans had speculated that Amy had distanced herself from the family, that she had somehow been cast aside, forgotten, but Ozzy's will told a different story. Amy received an equal share of the estate, 1/3, just like Jack and Kelly. This wasn't some token gesture. It was a clear, deliberate decision that spoke to the heart of who Ozzy was. Beyond the stage persona, his message was simple. Being visible doesn't mean being loved. Being silent doesn't mean being forgotten. For all the noise and spectacle of his public life, Ozzy valued something deeper: fairness, love, and family. The structure of his estate reflected this. There were no last-minute changes or emotional decisions made in the final months. Ozzy had planned ahead, making sure that even in death, there would be no chaos. Sharon, his wife, was named the executive of the estate, with a lifetime interest in the assets, but she had no power to change the distribution once Ozzy was gone. The estate wasn't about settling old scores or making a dramatic farewell. It was about ensuring peace for the family. Amy's inheritance, while equal, was structured a bit differently. Her portion of the estate would be released gradually, through a private trust, ensuring that her privacy and independence were protected. It wasn't about limiting her, it was about safeguarding her from the potential pitfalls of sudden wealth. Ozzy had always respected her decision to stay out of the public eye, and he wanted to make sure that her life remained her own, without the pressures that came with the family's fame. This wasn't just a will, it was a statement. A statement that said, "You all matter, regardless of how the world sees you. You are loved equally, and that love is reflected in how I've structured my legacy." In a world where family fortunes often turn into battlegrounds, Ozzy's estate was a rare example of quiet, intentional planning. For Sharon, the whole process had been difficult. She had always been outspoken, but when it came to Amy, the pain of her daughter's departure from the family's public life was still fresh. Sharon admitted in interviews that Amy's decision to leave at 16 and avoid the show had broken her heart. She had been so caught up in the opportunities the show provided that she hadn't fully understood how it had affected her daughter. Sharon's regret was palpable, but Ozzy's resolve was clear. Amy would never be left out, never be treated any differently from his other children. Amy's quiet path in life only made her inclusion in the will more poignant. Her low-profile existence, living a life away from the cameras, away from the tabloid drama, had often been misunderstood. People thought she was estranged, uninterested, or just fading into obscurity. But behind the scenes, Ozzy never stopped seeing her as his daughter. He knew that her value wasn't measured by her public presence, but by the strength of their bond, which was never broken by the cameras or the chaos of fame. And so, when the estate documents were released, revealing Amy's equal share, the public was stunned. There were no secrets, no hidden heirs. There was only fairness, plain and simple. Ozzy had structured his estate with clarity and love. For a man known for his wild antics, this was a rare moment of calm, a final act of protection and care for the family he had always put first. The way the estate was handled was a testament to Ozzy's foresight. Legal experts praised the professionalism of the will. There were no rushed decisions, no last-minute panic. This was a carefully planned structure, one that avoided the drama and dysfunction that often accompany high-profile celebrity estates. And at the heart of it all was the principle of fairness. Each child, no matter their level of public visibility, received an equal share of the legacy Ozzy had built. For a man who had spent his life screaming about chaos and mortality, Ozzy's final act was surprisingly quiet. The estate was structured with such precision that it was practically bulletproof. No fights, no legal battles, no contested terms. Just a simple, unbreakable plan that reflected his true values. In the end, Ozzy Osbourne's legacy wasn't defined by his chaotic public persona, but by the quiet love he had for his family. And in that silence, he had ensured that his children would never be left behind. As the details of Ozzy Osbourne's estate continued to unfold, one thing is clear: His final move wasn't about spectacle or shock. It was about ensuring peace, fairness, and love for the people who mattered most. It was the kind of legacy that would last beyond the headlines, beyond the stage, and beyond the noise. And in that, Ozzy Osbourne left the world with one final, unforgettable twist: peace. What do you think about Ozzy's estate and his final decisions? Drop your thoughts below. If you found this deep dive into Ozzy Osbourne's legacy as surprising as we did, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories like this.